No risk it, no biscuit.
Arizona Cardinals fans, do you see red? Are you part of the Red Sea? Then you are listening to the show for you. A podcast for Cardinals fans, by Cardinals fans, with outsider and insider perspectives. It's time to rise up and see red. Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans. Welcome to Rise Up, See Red, the latest edition of our show talking Arizona Cardinals preseason football. This is Jess, your host of CardsWire.com, a USA Today affiliate, and my co-host is Seth Cox from SB Nation's RebenToTheBirds.com. Seth, how are you doing this Tuesday night? That's what we're recording as always.
Oh, it's going well, man. How are you tonight?
Well, everything's going fine over on our end. We are getting close to the regular season. This is the fun stuff. We're getting close to the regular season. Preseason game 3, which, typically is supposed to be this, almost like basically a dress rehearsal. Cardinals don't look at it that way. But yeah, it's in Cardinals land. It's not great right now. We're having a little bit of panic of our Super Bowl team. That's supposed to be a Super Bowl team. That looks like they're poop right now. So that's kind of been the thing lately. Let's kind of go ahead and start it. Tonight's episode of Rise Up See Red is brought to you by Fan Essentials. How would you like to get all of your favorite NFL teams' merchandise delivered straight to your doorstep? Cardinals gear. Check out fanessentials.net. All you do is pick your favorite sports team, usually Cardinals, and every month you get your own team's gear shipped right to your door. They find the sports gear so you don't have to, and each fan box comes packed full with some amazing gear. It makes a great gift idea for any sports fan with prices starting at just at $34.99. Visit fanessentials.net, and you can use our promo code that you heard it as a Rise Up See Red listener. The promo code CRED for 30% off your first month. So visit fanessentials.net to get all the essentials you need. Still offering this promotion. If you send me a picture of your best Cardinals gear to the show to our show Twitter handle at Rise Up See Red or my Facebook page for the show Rise Up See Red, the best photo will get, the best Cardinals gear that you got will get a month for free. That's right, a free month of fanessentials.net. So do that. Check out the promo code as well. This promo code CRED. And tonight's show, we're going to talk about. Well, we got lots of reaction. There's plenty of stuff going on. We have some players coming back from injury. We've got some depth chart moves. We've got it was just a terrible preseason game. Just some such speculation with that. The Cardinals fall 19-3 to the San Diego Chargers last Friday night, in a game that was just terrible to watch, wasn't it? It was. I mean, even for preseason football, it was bad.
Yeah, it was not pretty. It was inefficient. I think that was the worst part, is like inefficient, and people seem disengaged. And I think that's the only concern you take from this game. I know we're going to talk about this a little bit, but I see a lot of people really concerned. I think the only concern from this game is how disengaged a lot of the team, especially the top level of the team, seemed on offense. Defensively, they were fine. I mean, there's really nothing to worry about.
So then that's basically what we're going to talk about. Takeaways of the game. We're going to talk about some stuff that's going around, the return of Robert Kimdichie, the return of Justin Bethel. We'll talk about the cornerback situation. When do they come back? The Keenan Lewis, a potential target for the Cardinals on the free agent market. Bringing in perhaps another cornerback. And then we're going to look ahead to the preseason game 3 this Sunday on national TV on Fox against the Houston Texans. Would make a really nice storyline because we kind of have the built-in thing. The goal is to get to Houston, right? And we're starting kind of the dress rehearsal in Houston. So let's go ahead and get started and talk about the game that we saw on Friday. As we already sort of mentioned, it was a terrible, terrible watch. And in particular, neither team looked good overall. The Cardinals only managed to muster a little over 200 yards of offense. Just over 200 yards of offense total. The Chargers were under 300, so basically under 300 yards, under 500 yards of offense between the two teams. and one touchdown came on a kind of a freaky play, the interception returned by Brandon Flowers. What you talked about the disengaged part. Was there anything that you watched from that game that just gave you worries?
You look at it overall, I think you can be semi-concerned with the quarterbacks past Palmer. I mean, Palmer, he's only thrown, I think, 15 total passes, maybe like 16 total passes in the preseason, so I don't really have the energy to be concerned about him yet. But Stanton's looked beyond awful so far. So from there, I mean, I don't know. I think you can be concerned about the injuries and the nicks and bruises, I guess you would say, with Cupati, Larry Fitzgerald, only because they're guys that have put their body through so much already. So and they're both knee concerns. So I think that's, one thing. But other than that, Chandler Catanzaro is the other one. It's the preseason. I really can't get too up in arms about anything else. I mean, it's definitely disappointing the way they've come out and played. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that. It's definitely not what we expected from this team, but I don't think it's to the level where you're, oh my gosh, is this team overrated? Like, I don't think you're there quite yet.
Yeah, and my takeaway was just it was terrible. It was just unbearable to watch. The offense didn't look good, but I'm not concerned about the offense. We saw them move down the field very well against Oakland with the starters. It was a different animal there in San Diego. For whatever reason, the running game. It was maybe San Diego's defense is better than advertised. They didn't have running room. Michael Floyd, that first pass that was, and Floyd didn't look like he sold a route all that well, and Palmer kind of misfired on a throw out to him. There's the interception, but that thing was, that was a freaky play.
And that was a busted play more than anything. Right. It's just one of those, like
how many times is that how many times is that going to happen? Like where he happens to leap up and the ball gets tipped and it lands in his hands. I mean, well, granted, we've seen that happen a couple of times over the past couple of years.
But I think you did hit on the fact that maybe you can be a little concerned about the running game because of the fact that the week before they allowed like 300 rushing yards against the Titans. So, I mean, but I'm sure that was like a focus for them going into game 2 of the preseason. Like, hey, we need to shut down this running BS. And so, I think, you brought that up. I completely spaced it. Like I said, I was trying not to get too high or low on anything. I do think that would be a fair thing to not be a concern about, but chalk up, to the back of your mind. Like, hey, is this something that we need to watch moving forward? And I think that's fair to think about and kind of follow along.
The other thing that there's been some chatter about the play of A.Q. Shipley and DJ Humphries and getting beat on things. People seem to be concerned, especially some local people around here are concerned about having not necessarily one or the other, the fact that both of them are on the line at the same time. I'm just not that concerned overall. You look at who they're replacing. Lyle Sinline, when he was younger, was a really good center. But the Lyle Sinline who played last year was by no means a world beater. He was adequate. The Cardinals need A.Q. Shipley to be adequate. DJ Humphries is replacing Bobby Massey. We've said this a lot. He doesn't need to be great. He needs to be Bobby Massey. At worst, we're just looking for average from the center play. Some would argue that all they need is slightly below average play to match what they had last year. and below average to slightly above average play at right tackle. Now Massey's ceiling, he's up and down. He was inconsistent from game to game in certain cases, but I'm just not worried about it. I don't like what I saw on the offense. I'm just not concerned with it.
Right. I think it was so short. Like, we've seen this offense come out and look flat in real games, and think back to the Cleveland game last year.
Oh, geez,
that was kind of the same thing right there. Like, it's unfortunately, complacency does set in, and so that can happen to even great teams. And I think that's just what happened right now, and I think that's where you kind of just leave it at that, and you chalk it up to whatever it is, and you kind of move on.
On the defensive side of the ball, I was pleased. I will say overall, when you look at the defensive unit, starters are getting pressure. Now, granted, this wasn't Phillip Rivers, so there's a little bit of caveat there. Not Phillip Rivers, it was Kellen Clemens, but You saw the defensive front getting some pressure. You saw Chandler Jones force a play to the right to cause Calais Campbell to hit Clemens. They were getting pressure in it, so I was pleased with that. After they kind of like with the Raiders game as well, they gave up one play at a first down. They had the first. Melvin Gordon got the first down on the first play, and then they kind of clamp it down after that. There's concern about Brandon Williams. Let's kind of talk about that. Did you see from Brandon Williams anything to raise your level of concern or lower it in any way?
It was funny. We talked a lot about it, you and I have, and nothing's really changed. And I got to go out to Cards Camp. It was pretty cool. Like, the first time I got to go out as media. Thanks, Jess, for passing along that media credential, and we appreciate that. But I talked a lot with like Adam Green and Doug Franz a little bit, and it was we basically all three said the same thing. Like, the problem right now isn't the fact that he's not in position. It's just that he literally has no feel for the position yet. Like, technique-wise, he's average, but there's no instincts for the position yet. And I think that kind of you have to remember, like, 98%, if not more, of these guys that are playing in the NFL have played a position probably since they were in Pee-wees. And he was playing cornerback for the first time last year, and he only played half the snaps. It's not even like he was like the shutdown corner who shadowed, the best receiver. Like, so it's just going to take time for him to learn how to react to the football, to learn how to, make a play on the football, and so on and so forth. And, fair or unfair, he just hasn't had that time yet. So a lot of the times when he's beat, it's not that he's in a bad position or he's beat because he just got beat. I mean, we saw the Keenan Allen where he just got roasted and the ball didn't come Keenan Allen's way. That's going to happen because he has no idea what he's doing technique-wise. But athletically, he makes up for it a lot. It's just that a lot of passes this year where you're like, man, put your arm up, and that doesn't happen. Even at camp on Sunday, that happened 3 times, twice to J.J. Nelson and once to Michael Floyd. Like, he was step for step with them, and it's just like, dude, put your arm up. Like, literally, like when the receiver's arms go up, put your arms up. Like, you want to yell that to him. Like, just put your arm up. Like, and
and he'll turn around and look for the ball, so it's not an arm bar, so it's not just deflected. He'll get flat. He's going to get I said this a few times. If he's playing significant snaps, it's going to be a roller coaster because he's going to make some plays that you're like, wow. But he's going to get flagged a lot, and he's going to give up some plays. It's just a matter of, does it happen enough? Does it hurt the team, or just is it an inconvenience?
Yeah, and so that's what it'll have to be. We'll have to see how he kind of progresses through that, because it's like you said, it's going to be a learning curve. the thing is, like, it's instincts at this point. Like, the technique stuff, that's gonna take time. Again, 500 snaps in college, 503 or whatever it was in college at cornerback. Like, no, he's just not going to be there yet. But it's the other part that you have the question on, that you want to see. You know, does he develop those instincts, or is he unfortunately going to be one of those guys that is in a position a lot of times and just doesn't know how to make a play on the ball?
That's the other. So now let's kind of move down the line for the depth chart. What did you see from anyone else that was impressive, not impressive? Obviously, Jerron Brown is the talk, is continuing to be the talk of camp. I don't know how much to put into that. We've sort of discussed it. Is he going to make Michael Floyd expendable in terms of production, and will he? How much will he be using this season? I don't even know. He's still a receiver 4, and he's not even the regular receiver 4 because Arians wants J.J. Nelson out there for his speed. So he's still kind of a quasi-4, quasi-5.
Yeah, and I don't see that changing much barring injury, and so I don't think you put much stock into anything right now. Like, I think he's a really nice, like you said, 4-5 receiver that you can plug into Larry or Michael's spot, and you don't feel a ton of pressure that you're going to lose a ton. Like, he's not going to be as dynamic as those guys, but he's going to catch the passes he should, except against Seattle, apparently. But, you know, outside of that, like, the question becomes, like we said, like, is Arians, and this will be the tell, is Arians comfortable enough with Jerron Brown that he lets Michael Floyd go and Jerron Brown fills his spot next year? You know, they offer him maybe a bigger contract than he would get on the open market, you know, something like 3 years, $9 million, as opposed to, you know, 5 years, $45 million. Floyd probably wants 5 years, you know, $70 million. So, you know, are they willing to say, okay, we'll give Jerron Brown 3 years at $9 million and pay him as much over 3 years as what we'll pay Michael Floyd for 1 year and probably get the same amount of production? I don't know, but that's going to be the interesting thing. And we won't really figure that out until the end of the season unless they extend Floyd before that. And then, you know, they'll probably be forced to let Jerron Brown go, because with Fitz and Floyd, like, you can't really continue to pay money to wide receivers after that.
Oh, geez, no. In terms of other players, Matt Barkley looked better, but it's not like he looked good. I mean, he was good at dumping the ball off to running backs and to tight ends. I don't think by any means he still did enough to warrant any sort of look on the roster. I didn't like what I saw, and plus, I mean, they didn't generate any points except for the one long field goal. And it's, you know, I wasn't impressed by really anyone except for Kerwin Williams for, like, what was it, one run? And that was about it. He had one good run, and that was really the only good run of the entire game.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was really the defense. The defense was excellent. Everything else was, whatever. I mean, like, it was a bad game. So, I mean, outside of that, the offense was forgettable on purpose type thing. Like, you're like, I'm just not going to even think about this because I don't really have to write about it past Saturday, and I'm not going to go back and visit it.
So, how about this? This is something because there was some chatter, especially because it's a local thing. Mike Bercovici, now granted, it's not like the offense put up numbers, but he looked good. He looked like a guy who could play quarterback, not like Matt Barkley. He's a guy who made some good throws. He got hit, made some throws. He looks like he knows what he's doing offensively. Which caused me to, I think this kind of started with a few things about Twitter, but I posted the question during the game so how about this? Because Bercovici's really in a situation, he's in a no-win situation in San Diego. He's quarterback 4 behind Phillip Rivers and Kellen Clemens and Zach Mettenberger, who is a Ken Wisenhunt guy. And so he's quarterback 4, which means he's not going to make the roster. I mean, it'd take a miracle for him to make the roster. People talk about keeping him on the practice squad. I don't see any scenario in which a team has 4 quarterbacks because it's hard to give 3 quarterback snaps at practice. And the practice squad players are there. Why? So they have enough people at their positions to practice. You can't have 4 quarterbacks, which leads to this. We know the Cardinals are willing to change, as we saw it a year ago, and even trade for. They traded for Matt Barkley after they looked at Logan Thomas and Phillip Sims all during training camp and decided they really didn't want either one. Jake Coker obviously isn't the answer based on his playing time. Matt Barkley has given no one any confidence watching him play. And so what do they do at the 3rd quarterback? I expect the Cardinals to go in a different direction, whether it's snagging a guy off waivers or making a trade for some young guy or the practice squad, which brings in Mike Bercovici. The Cardinals did have interest in him after the draft. They did want to bring him in as an undrafted guy, whether it was a tryout or even one of his priority guys. But he went with San Diego because that was the first team to contact him. He stayed kind of loyal to that. But he's going to have to go through waivers. Whether they land him on the 53-man roster or the practice squad, Mike Bercovici is the type of player who would be an intriguing number 3. Something to think about. I don't think he'd be a bad, because, I mean, what we see, he's not going to be worse than Matt Barkley. He's not going to be worse than Ryan Lindley. He's not going to be worse than Logan Thomas. The only downside that I see, I wrote about this on Sunday, is really the only downside of his size, because he's a small quarterback.
Yeah, he's only like 6 feet. So
he's 6 foot 205. So he doesn't fit the Arians profile, but he's got he's got the arm. He showed he can make the throws. He's picked up an offense that's, Kes Winston's offense isn't any less complex than Arians' offense, and he looked good doing it. So, and the Chargers people have been impressed. So it'd be an interesting thing. I'm not saying, hey, he's the quarterback of the future, because. Yeah, but if you're looking for a QB3 to perhaps develop, I wouldn't say no to him.
No, and I think like what's hard for people to get is that there's 2 types of quarterbacks you need on your roster. You need 3 really, but you need a franchise quarterback. Cardinals have that for at least we're hoping 3. Let's just go 1 year at a time with age, but we're hoping 3 more years as fans. Backup that can hold water, and they have that. And, I talked about that in my Matt Barkley piece. Drew Stanton still has all the shine in Bruce Arians' eyes from going 5-3 when Carson Palmer went down. I don't think people understand how much that means to a head coach.
Guy that you can rely on, and is not going to just screw it up.
Yeah, and I mean 5-3 as a backup quarterback is a huge number.
It is.
It's massive. And then you need the future. So you look at, like, for instance, like Denver. Denver's in a weird spot. They had their franchise quarterback and their future quarterback, and they lost both. So then they all of a sudden had a stopgap. They have Trevor Siemian, who's been like maybe we can develop him into a nice backup. And then Mark Sanchez can't beat him out. And Paxton Lynch isn't really even in the conversation because he's their quarterback of the future. It's like, well, we're not going to screw him up just to have him play this year. The Cardinals have their first 2 quarterbacks. Like, there's not even a doubt in Bruce Arians' mind. Like, they have quarterback 1 and 2. So they either need to find a future quarterback 2 or obviously a future quarterback 1. Well, I can tell you this. They're not going to find a future quarterback 1 right now any time of the year. Like, unless they make a huge, like, massive trade for, like, a Jimmy Garoppolo type player. Like, they're not going to find a future quarterback 1, and I don't even think Jimmy Garoppolo is, but they're not going to find a future quarterback 1 this time of year. Like, that includes Matt Barkley. That includes, like you said, Mike Bercovici or any of those guys. But what Mike Bercovici could be, all this ranting aside, is he could be Drew Stanton in 2 years, maybe a year. And then all of a sudden you transition from a Carson Palmer, Drew Stanton, Mike Bercovici, quarterback room to all of a sudden we have Carson Palmer and Mike Bercovici, and now we have Mike Bercovici, who, God forbid anything happens to Palmer, he can get us through 3 to 6 games. We have 100% confidence in him, and we can still go out and find their Paxton Lynch, Blake Bortles, whoever they are in love with at that time. So I think that's what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody that can take over for Drew Stanton, whether it be next year or 2 years from now. They're not looking for somebody that can take over for Carson Palmer, because if they were, they wouldn't have signed Carson Palmer to a 2-year contract extension. Well, 1 year, but basically guaranteeing 2 years.
So, yeah, and that's what makes these guys, especially if you're developing a future backup, that's what makes these guys expendable. Last year, I believed, and I wrote about it during the preseason, that preseason was crucial for Logan Thomas, not to show that he's a starting quarterback, but to show that he could be the backup so they could let Drew Stanton go. And they obviously didn't. I mean, he's gone. And Stanton's still around, and he's around for 2 years. So there's that. Matt Barkley, Ryan Lindley, just kind of bring guys in. Do they learn the offense, and then can they perform on the field at least a little bit? Are they good in the classroom? Are they good in the practice field? Ryan Lindley was 2 out of 3. Good on the practice field, good in the classroom, knew the offense, just couldn't put it together on the field. He really is sort of the perfect guy to have if he could actually do anything once on the field. That's the only thing that happened there. So let's kind of move on from let's next up on the Rise Up See Red, we're going to move away from that dreadful preseason game, and we're going to look not quite yet at the next preseason game, but some of the things that have been coming up. So we're going to talk about coming up next. We're going to talk about some of the players coming back from injury, a potential target for the Cardinals, Justin Bethel and his role, the depth chart, and so on. So that's coming up next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on Rise Up See Red, and now we're going to talk about some odds and ends around the Cardinals as we look forward, not quite to the preseason game that comes up on this Sunday, but there's lots of little tidbits, such as, first and foremost, Keenan Lewis. Not Keenan Allen, but Keenan Lewis, that we both messed up on the name as we were texting back and forth. Keenan Lewis, veteran cornerback, since let go, has had some injury issues recently, and he is on the Cardinals' radar. So what do you think about him as a potential? Again, this is it appears to be just kind of throwing more stuff at the wall. They brought in Mike Jenkins, they brought in Alan Ball, and Justin Bethel's coming back, and Brandon Williams, and so they're just trying to make something stick. What do you think about Keenan Lewis?
If he was healthy, he wouldn't be available. And that's kind of my thought process with Keenan Lewis. Now, there is a rumor out there that he's had issues with New Orleans, or not issues, but they didn't mesh with he and New Orleans defense coordinator Dennis Allen. So maybe that's what it is. Honestly, I don't know. What I always say about, corners is if you're signing a corner this time of year because the talent level is so scarce in the NFL, it's either because he's waiting to pick his spot or because nobody else wanted him at the time. I mean, Antonio Cromartie just got signed. Like, I'm not trying to say this Keenan Lewis thing would be a bad thing. I don't put much into cornerbacks that are being signed right now because it's like a pass rusher. There are just so few good ones that they all get scooped up immediately. So to be the team that finds the needle in the haystack, it's just such a shot in the dark. I mean, you look at even when they signed Cromartie, they signed him early in the free agency. It wasn't like it was a late signing. Like, I'm trying to think outside, like, what late signing have they had where it was like this guy had all these offers and was sitting there and nobody, it was Dwight Freeney. That's really it. Like, Freeney was the only one that had offers, and he was like, I'm just going to kind of pick my spot. I mean, even Eric Winston, it was like, crap, Bobby Massey. All right, let's Eric Winston come aboard, type thing. So, and Jermaine
Gresham's addition, it was when, we have all our tight ends keep getting hurt.
Yeah,
Chris Johnson, but no one wanted Chris Johnson because of the reputation and the getting shot and everything.
Well, and nobody wanted Gresham because of the injuries. Nobody wanted Gresham because of his injuries. I mean,
right.
And that was the thing. So, but those are also, there's a lot more talent available in the league. Like you look at running backs every week, you're like, who is this that just ran for 110 yards? I've never even heard of this guy, So, I want to like Keenan Lewis. He was good like 3 years ago, I think it was. He was good, and then he's been really kind of off and injured since then. So he's basically Allen Ball. Oh wait,
well, if there's a player who I think their best option, veteran-wise, it's still Mike Jenkins, because he's at least a guy who's played at a really high level. He's played at a real high level and has been at least solid, but his only issue has been durability, as opposed to the other guys who battled durability and effectiveness as well. In terms of, we'll talk about the roster. As I built my 53-man roster projection, I leaned towards Allen Ball. I'm wishing I hadn't, because I still think my what's his name? I just forgot what his name was. The guy that signed, Mike Jenkins.
Oh yeah,
I said him once and I just completely spaced his name. I still think Jenkins the best because he's the most talented guy of the veterans. As long as he can, not break his other hand or get hurt again, it looks like he's in position to be
the guy. Yeah,
I wouldn't feel bad. I wouldn't be overly concerned if he ended up starting. He's a guy who's done it for a lot of his career, and he's played well.
And the other thing you have to remember is they're going into preseason game 4, and they're going to make cuts soon. So they need some bodies at the cornerback position. Because, you look at it like Asa Jackson's been injured. Who else has been injured back there?
Everyone, pretty much.
Yeah, Carriel Brooks was out.
Allen
Ball and that's who it was. Ball and Jackson have been out the last couple days of practice. So it's like, well, we kind of need bodies in here. I don't really care if they make the team,
right? And are they going to keep, because the guys like Ronald Zamora and Trevon Hartfield, those are the first guys who get cut, because those are way down at the bottom of the roster guys.
Exactly. So I don't know. Like, I think they want a veteran in the room, and so basically Allen Ball, Mike Jenkins, and if they do sign Keenan Lewis, if his hip checks out, because I heard it was his hip that's been giving him issues, but maybe it's something else. Then maybe. But I think they just want one of those guys. I don't think they want multiple of those guys. So, like you said, like, Jenkins has looked the best, but again, these guys got to get on the field.
Which comes to the next guy, a guy who's finally getting on the field, Justin Bethel. Arians opened the door, and maybe that was the whole plan. Maybe that was the whole plan the entire time. Just, it was a week ago he said Brandon Williams is the starter. He's been great. And, I think by doing that, I think that was a public way to say, Justin, get on the field. Stop sitting around. And now that he's on the field, Kent Summerall, he said, getting him a look on there in practice, he said he looked okay. He didn't look bad. And so the door is open for him to reclaim that job, that starting job, which, it really would be best for everyone involved. That is the best scenario for the Cardinals if Justin Bethel can be the starter. If he comes back, he's healthy enough, and he shows that he's better now than Brandon Williams. That, because based on what we talk about Brandon Williams, that is the best scenario for the Cardinals, is that Justin Bethel can be the starter.
Yeah, and I think that's what they still shoot for, and that's what they still want. So right now, it's just like we're going to continue to push Brandon Williams. He's going to get reps. Because look at it this way, and you and I have had this conversation on this. Like, Brandon Williams is listed as a starter, but he's basically playing the second team cornerback position. He's out there with the starters, but they play 10 plays and then they're off. And then it's like, okay, here you go, Brandon. Now here's your time to shine, right? Like, so I just think that is that they want they want Justin Bethel to win that job, but they're going to use Brandon Williams as the carrot to kind of nudge him along to get him back and healthy.
And here's the thing that I'm concerned about, and I think I brought this up last week as well. He had a foot injury last year, so he played on a fractured foot. He had the surgery. He didn't practice at all. He tried to push himself to come back for camp, and he had a setback. And I'm gonna go a little speculation here. I was listening this morning on Tuesday morning to Doug and Wolf, and Doug was talking about how he was on down there at field level, and Bertrand Berry was there, and he stepped on the field because Bertrand Berry can step on the field, and walked over to Justin Bethel, had this conversation, and Bethel was shaking his head, and Bertrand's body language wasn't good. Doug didn't ask, but he gave the impression that perhaps his comeback from the injury, that the foot is still bothering him, and that's my one concern. Foot injuries, they linger. So even if they're hit, they linger all year. Let's look at Mike Upati. He said he fractured his foot in that Super Bowl, or the playoff game before the Super Bowl when he was with the 49ers. That whole next year, not terribly effective. Andre Ellington, the foot issue came 2 years ago. What happened last year? Now they're saying he's finally running on 2 feet. So his foot was healthy, but it wasn't good last year. We saw the same thing with Lorenzo Alexander, who, when he was here as a special teams ace, he had the foot issue, the Liz Frank injury, and it took a full year after that. He was on the field, but he wasn't effective. That's my only concern with Bethel. One, he's got to get on the field. I think he hopefully should be. If he can get the confidence thing up, he's the best guy. He's the best option. He's the best option for the Cardinals right now. But that foot is not going to be right all year. I don't think it'll be right all year. It's not going to be right until next year. He's healthy. I mean, it's stable. He's cleared, but I don't think his foot's going to be right all year.
Yeah, and that's definitely a concern and something you worry about him, kind of what is he going to be? What is he going to do? How is he going to look as he kind of moves forward through here? Is it going to end up being a problem for the whole year? And this is, it's like completely, I forget what the word is, but heresy to say stuff like this. But that's one of BA's biggest downfalls as a coach is his just low tolerance for injuries and guys that are injured and guys that refuse or that are hurt and that refuse to play hurt. Because, there's a difference between injured and hurt. And
right.
Injured is, where you're out, and hurts where, it hurts. Well, play. And I think BA's old schoolness, if you would, kind of shows through sometimes in that, and we see it when it comes back into the fact that he's had a lot of players that have been less than expected after an injury, and maybe it's because, like you said, they did come back too early from that injury.
And that leads us to Alex Okafor. I mean, we talked about it when we found out the news. I guess it was probably via text. The thing that makes sense for his career is to get surgery. But when Arians comes out, when they first find out about, what's the first thing Arians said? He's got a torn biceps tendon. He should be able to play through it easy. Wait, what? So now you just completely put the onus on Okafor, basically saying Arians, before Okafor has a chance to talk about it, they immediately could ask him about it. Arians already said, yeah, he should be able to play through it easy. He's already put that pressure on him. So what question did he? Right. He didn't have any choice after that. And I wrote about it. So it was a terrible situation to be in because one, he's already let the team down before. He had a terrible year last year. Then with the whole toe and the playoff thing and the pool party, that really kind of made him disappear in terms of trust. He's in a contract year. He's playing for a team that has high expectations. So there's a lot for him to lose if he goes on the shelf. But and they need him. And the thing is, they do need him because behind him is Kareem Martin, and as good as he's looked, according to Arians, he still has to prove himself to be a consistent guy to even be a cleanup pass rusher like Okafor was 2 years ago. So Okafor was in a no-win situation, so he had really no choice but to play through it. And, we've seen players do that. Kevin Minter played with a torn pectoral. Adrian Wilson played through a torn biceps in 2011 and had one of the best years of his career. But just the fact that, Arians is so mum on a lot of different things, but to come out and say, yeah, Alex will be able to play through that, no problem, no big deal. It's, just a torn thing. You need the arm that you use to tackle. Don't mind him on that. Maybe he doesn't need to tackle. He just needs to hit the quarterback or something.
Right. And again, that just goes back to, that conversation we just had. It's like, really, you and I have had this conversation about John Brown. It's just football at the end of the day. I understand it's these guys' livelihood and stuff, but Alex Okafor's made like $4 million in his career so far or something like that. Like, just get healthy, sign a 1-year kind of prove-it deal, and then go from there. But he's expected to play. He's going to try to play because that's what he thinks is needed of him. Sorry, he's made just under $3 million in his career, and
he's gonna make 1.7 this year. So
yeah, and so it's, and I think we talked about it on Revenge of the Birds. I think part of it comes from Arian saying like, hey, if you're gonna get paid by us, because if he goes on injured reserve, they have to pay him for the year.
Yes, they do.
So it's like if we're gonna pay you this $1.7 million, you're gonna play, and you almost like hate to think that maybe the delay is like, all right, we're just gonna cut you, so we don't have to pay you that money because you might not be effective, and that's his second time he's torn that bicep, isn't it?
It is. That's the same injury he had his rookie year.
Yeah, is it the same bicep? I
don't know. That's the one thing I didn't know. I don't know if it was the same one, but yeah, that was, jeez.
Yeah,
Mister got hurt.
Yeah. So you just wonder, what's going to happen.
We've got a couple of guys coming back. Tyrann Mathieu coming back. Robert Kimdichie, Frosty Rucker. We talked about Bethel. They're all practicing now. Steve Keim made it sound when he spoke on Arizona Sports that there's a good chance Kimdichie plays on Sunday. That's good. He needs the reps. Just keep him light. I don't want him to get too many reps this time around, but I do want him to get lots of reps in preseason game 4. He needs those. Frosty Rucker doesn't really matter. He doesn't need the reps in the preseason. Now, Tyrann Mathieu. Arians didn't close the door on playing this Sunday, but it didn't sound hopeful. And if he's not going to play this Sunday, would you play him preseason game 4? That's the only question to me. If you're not going to play him in game 3 with the starters, would you put him out there in game 4 with the quote unquote scrubs? That as disrespectful it is, in football terms and fan terms, do you really want Tyrann Mathieu out there getting football reps with scrubs? I don't.
No, Mathieu, no. The thing is, like, Kimdichie needs to play. Like, he's never played in the NFL. It's Tyrann Mathieu. I mean, we're talking about the guy that was, one of the 2 or 3 favorites to be the defensive player of the year last year. So let's just keep moving along and, not worry about it. Like, if he doesn't play this week, then there's no reason to have him during the preseason. And, I treat it just like I would Frosty Rucker. Like, those guys know what they're doing. They know their positions. Yeah, they haven't gelled with the new players yet, but it's unfortunate, but that happens.
And then the other thing to talk about would be, the new depth chart is out. I only really wrote about one thing. That was Andre Ellington is now the lead returner for both punts and kicks. Not J.J. Nelson, not Kerwin Williams, not Chris Hubert, not even Patrick Peterson. It's Andre Ellington. We had an interesting conversation just before the show. This is an interesting move on multiple levels. And let's talk about the whole idea of why suddenly he needs to be involved in the return game. We talked about two main things. One is Andre Ellington touching the ball. They're going to struggle to find times to get him the ball on offense, just simply when you've got David Johnson, Chris Johnson, it's going to be hard to get him in there, And so give him more touches for Andre Ellington, gives him a chance, especially in the open field, gives him opportunities. And the other is he's a third-string running back. You can't have a third-string running back who doesn't play special teams. And the only thing that Ellington possibly could do on special teams is returns. So let's talk about those two things. Give me your thought that you were talking to me about before the show about, is it worth giving him those extra touches?
Hey, sports fans, football season's here, and it's time to get in on the action with MyBookie. MyBookie is the industry-leading sports betting website that offers real Vegas odds on football, baseball, and all your favorite sporting events. You can take a side, the total, or even fantasy points props. MyBookie lets you bet online and win big. Did the game already kick off? Don't sweat it. MyBookie has in-game live betting on every major league and event, even esports. There's no better time to join MyBookie than today. Go to MyBookie to open an account and start winning. Use promo code CHAMPION when you register for your account and get a 100% sign-up bonus up to $1,000 on your first deposit. Bet today. Visit MyBookie's website or call 844-866-2387. That's 844-866-2387. Check them out today and use promo code CHAMPION for a 100% bonus. Terms and conditions apply for entertainment purposes only. Void where prohibited.
Right. So the whole thing with Ellington has always been, I coined the free Ellington movement back in 2013 or whenever he was drafted. I don't even remember that far back now, but I coined the free Ellington movement because I was tired of watching Rashard Mendenhall run for 2.8 yards per carry. So, and it seemed like a good idea at the time, right? 5.5 yards per carry, 9.4-ish yards per reception, dynamic playmaker.
And he was potentially a 2,000-yard all-purpose, 2,000 yards for scrimmage type player. That was the talk for 2014, if I recall.
Right, and the thing was let's get this, let's get this going. Let's get him all the touches. And so the Cardinals did that in 2014. Let's get Andre Ellington touches, 200 carries. Not even, I think it was just under 700 yards, or right around 700 yards rushing, which is, for those counting at home, terrible. So he went from a guy that was averaging 5.5 yards per carry to a guy that was at 3.6. He basically turned into Rashard Mendenhall, and then his average in his receptions went down from 9.4 to 8.2. So all of a sudden he was just. Then last year happened, and he's really good again. He all of a sudden
averages over 6 yards a carry. He's doing big plays. He's got game-changing plays.
Right, and he all of a sudden is not just a key cog, but he is also, one of the most dynamic weapons in the NFL. So here's my question and my concern. So we go back, we look at, Andre Ellington's career touches and what he needs to be. And, in 2013, his rookie season, he had 118 rushes and 39 receptions. So he's right around, just under 150 total touches. 2014, when he's 3.3 yards per carry. Sorry, I way oversold him on that. 3.3 yards per carry, 201 rushes, 46 receptions, so just under 250 touches on the season. So 100 more carries, and his total yardage was negligible from 2013. Last year, again, he was third type guy, 60 total touches, but he put up nice numbers, 300 yards rushing, 150 yards receiving, great numbers, three total touchdowns. I think you want him right about that 150, maybe 200 total touches, maybe that might be pushing it. So the Cardinals last year had 71 total returns on kicks and punts, more than that, but 71 were run out of the end zone or returned by Patrick Peterson when he wasn't fair catching the ball. Does he need 71 more touches? Now, if you're only going to use him like you did in 2015, sure, why not? You're taking him from 60 to 130. I think that's good. I think that's a fair amount. But if you're going to use him more closely to that 2013 where he's, at 150 touches, now you're back up into that 225 range where he really wasn't effective. And let's be honest, the more touches he has, the guy you want touching the ball, because he's just an injury concern waiting to happen. He's a guy that has just been really nicked up throughout his career.
Dating back to college, too. You see, he's been pretty much injured every single year for the last, 5 or 6, if you include college, right?
Right, and so that's where your question is, how much do you want to put on him? So is his lone job going to be punts and kicks returns with like last year being how much he's going to touch the ball offensively? If it is, then go ahead. I don't see an issue with it. I mean, he's not going to get what the fans want, where he's getting those 150 touches on the offensive side of the ball, but he's going to have a chance to, make 150 touches and plays on the total on the season. Or are they going to try to get him those 150 offensive touches plus an additional 75, touches in the return game? And will he be able to hold up and be effective? I mean, he has one kick return in his NFL career for 21 yards. That's not, that's nothing to write home about. I want to make sure I get this right because the number's absurd. He had 25 returns in college. So it wasn't even like he did it in college. He had, right here, 26. I was really close. 26 returns in college. He wasn't good as a freshman, just 15 yards per return on kickoffs. As a sophomore, he was phenomenal. 34 yards per kickoff return on only 7 returns, 1 touchdown. And then, again, he regressed every year after that. And he's returned 1 punt in his career. One. And literally 1 and for 3 yards. So, I mean,
Here's the other thing is that this is it. He hasn't even looked good doing it in the preseason. He got leveled, I think, on his very first one that he did in Oakland. He got depleted, just blown up. He hasn't brought a kick out to the 25 yet. And, Bruce Arians went from 1 week, we asked about, returning punts. He always never caught punts. To next week, he's returning punts. And, catch this, he's a natural punt catcher. Natural at it. So I think they're just trying to, I think Arians likes him. He really likes him. Really likes the dynamic he brings. So he's trying to find ways to use him and have him not waste a roster spot as a third running back, because he is so valuable as a dynamic playmaker in certain situations offensively. But you have to have him on special teams. That's the only thing he can do, even if he's not look good doing it. He doesn't look comfortable doing it. He doesn't look like he's about to break anything. It just looks like he's running. And the kick returns that we've seen, we haven't seen good kick returns since probably the year, not LaRod Stevens howling last year, but probably the years previous to his final year in 2012. So we're talking 2010, 2011, since we've really I feel like that we've had a good kick return game.
Right, and you haven't seen kick returns and punt returns be a strength in a long time, and I think they're trying to fix that and make it dynamic again. And I think they're also trying to kind of kill, like you said, two birds with one stone. All right, or one stone. So, all right, we want a dynamic return game, and we need Andre Ellington to be involved more because he's only going to be the third running back. All right, I got an idea. Hear me out. It's crazy, but the guy with 27 or 28 career returns in college and the pros, we're going to make him our return specialist and our third down gadget back. That'll get him the touches he needs. I mean, look, I have no problem with the experiment, but I hope it's one of those things that they're like, all right, this didn't work. Let's ditch this.
Well, especially since who do you have on the roster? They have a guy who was the best returner in the nation in J.J. Nelson, who's shown promise. Now, he's got to, as we talked, he's got to not get hurt every time he gets tackled, and he's got to not fumble the ball when he's tackled. But this is a guy who he was supposed to be. He was the solution to the returns game problem.
Right, and it's one of those weird things. So, like, obviously, NFL and Pee Wee football is night and day. But I coach Pee Wee tackle football, and we were having this conversation the other day because we have a kid on our team that's just insanely fast. I mean, he'd be like the J.J. Nelson of this league. But he's never played tackle before, and one of the coaches was like, what could happen is he could be so fast that he ends up taking a hit so hard that he's not used to it, and he's done. And I kind of feel like that's what happens with J.J. Nelson on kick and punt returns, right? Like, he's so fast that he returns the punt and the kick, but then he just gets leveled, and you're like, oh no, that's not what we were going for. That's not what we wanted. So, yeah, I mean, you look at J.J. Nelson, like, it's the complete opposite, and he did it more than Andre Ellington, but 17 yards per kick return as a freshman, sophomore, up to 23 as a junior, and then 38 as a senior. And then punt returns, he averaged just under 11 and had a touchdown on 26 punt returns as a senior. So at UAB, dude returned the ball 48 times for just under 1,100 yards, or just over 1,100 yards, excuse me, and 2 touchdowns. It's not bad.
No.
That's not bad at all. So, but like I was trying to say in my long-winded explanation, you do honestly worry that maybe that is what happens. He is so fast that he creates such a force as he's actually running that it is dangerous, and that's why he's hurt. Because when you look at the catches he makes, he very rarely is getting tackled from in front. It's usually behind. When he's getting tackled in front, he's usually diving or, kind of trying to ditch the contact. Whereas, as a return man, you can't really do that if you want to gain yardage. So
exactly. So let's wrap up this section. Let's move on to the next section coming up on Rise Up See Red. We're going to talk about the next preseason game. What are we looking forward to? Is this the beginning of a neat storyline from a series of Houston to Houston? We'll talk about that next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on Rise Up See Red for a final segment. We're going to talk about the upcoming preseason game against the Houston Texans. Bruce Arians made it sound like third preseason game's no big deal. I was reminded of Teddy Green's famous rant about the Chicago Bears, because that rant started because of how they approached the third preseason game. That's where he said, the Bears are who we thought they were. That's why we took the damn field. Who takes the field on a third preseason game? It's like it's bullshit. And that's exactly what Arians is taking. He's like, he doesn't see this as a dress rehearsal. He's not going out there to say, okay, starters, I want you to play into a half. He's like, okay, I know what the offense can do. I know what the starters can do. We're just going to get our work in. And I want to, he wishes that J.J. Watt were going to play because that they get a better tune-up or better warm-up. But he's treating this preseason game the way Denny Green hated.
Yeah, I mean, but that's Arians right now, and we're seeing something similar in Minnesota. I actually talked to one of their in Arif Hassan, and I was talking to him about it tonight about how mad Minnesota beat writers are because he won't say whether or not Adrian Peterson is going to play. And so he's like, well, I want an advantage. It's like, dude, it's preseason. Like, what advantage are you gaining by not telling them? Not even not playing him. It's like, who cares if he doesn't play or not? But what are you gaining by not telling them whether he's going to play? Because guess what? If you beat them or if your first team goes out and is great without Adrian Peterson, guess how much it matters? 0, because nobody's going to game plan for you without Adrian Peterson. So just one of those things, like some coaches and love the intrigue and the ability to kind of be silly with things. Mike Zimmer doing that right now. Other coaches are like, can we just get this over with? Like, I'm just going to put all these guys out here that aren't going to make the team and let them go because I know what I have on offense and defense. And by God, if any of those people get hurt, I'm just going to shut it down for the year anyway. So, and so it's funny to see like the different ideas. And, Arians is he's such a different cat and the way he works and the way he's wired. But, it's just one of those things that you do wish, like Arian said, like you do wish you could see J.J. Watt. You just do. Like it's special to see great players, whether it's in preseason or regular season, but it also is good for your team to see great players that will challenge you. Anybody else will, and it gives a guy like DJ Humphries or Evan Mathis or Cole Toner, if Mike Upati's out, gives these guys a chance to see what it's like to go up against the best in the game, as opposed to, going up against a guy that's going to be selling car insurance in a week.
Right. And it goes like this as well. Different teams are in different stages, especially with coaching staffs. And Arians is in a different place. He doesn't really need to evaluate to see if his starters can be effective. He knows they can be. So it's just getting them enough work to be tested. 2 years ago, his first year, 2013 and 2014, that wasn't the case. That wasn't the case. They needed him. They needed them to. They needed him to play so they can kind of show what they're doing. And going back to the Denny Green thing, the Cardinals were a team that had to prove things and had to get that rhythm going. While the Bears were expected to be a great team. They believed they were a great team, and they already knew what they had. So that's what you do. So what do I want to see this weekend? Well, obviously, I'd like to see not terrible football. I don't want to see terrible football. I don't want to see the offense look awful. The defense has looked fun. And that's the thing. I've been good with what the defense has done starters-wise. The offense I wasn't concerned with in the first week. I didn't like what I saw last week. So I'd like to see it bounce back. And for me, I'm looking at a couple of players. I want Robert Kimdichie to play at least a little, and I want to see how he does. After that, yeah, I kind of been good. I mean, I want players, that I mentioned this last week, I want players to flash. I want some players to stand up to say, okay, he needs to be on the roster.
Especially right now, like a Tristan Akpalagu or a Shaq Riddick, right? Like with the Alex Okafor thing, you want, what Kareem Martin has. He's actually flashed pretty well in the preseason, I feel like. And so you feel like you're okay with that. But you do want one more. Like we saw Denver last year with their rotation of Ware, Von Miller, Shane Ray, and Shaquille Barrett, like how devastating that was to defenses, especially late in games when it was like, all right, well, we're just going to leave Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware in the game, and now we can have, because they got to take 25 plays off during the game because you don't really lose anything with Shaq Barrett in the second quarter and, midway through the third quarter, or Shane Ray in the lineup instead. And so you kind of want that same thing. Like you want to be like, all right, Kareem Martin can take, 10, take 2 series in the second quarter, give Chandler Jones a break, and Tristan Akpalagu or Shaq Riddick can do, the same thing for Marcus Golden. So in the fourth quarter, when it's time to pin back their ears and go get somebody on a final drive, you don't have to worry about it. Was a nice player to have in that situation because he's a guy that you've seen be able to rush the passer before. Now all of a sudden, there's a question mark. So you'd like to see Tristan and Shaq play well. Like you said, I would like to see Kim Diche play about 15 snaps, especially since my boy Jonathan Bullard that I really liked coming out of Florida has looked so good in Chicago so far. So, let's see Kim Diche come and do kind of a similar thing where he's just being completely disruptive from the interior. I'd like to see Drew Stanton complete a pass. Has he done that this preseason?
I think he's completed a couple. I think.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, you would like him to look like he's not a rookie trying to make a roster, because that's what he looks like. I'm sorry, but he looks like a rookie that's like, oh, crap, I'm not going to make this roster because I just threw that ball 17 feet over J.J. Nelson's wide open head. Like, and then with Barkley, I'd like to see him push the ball down the field. Like, man, this is not a West Coast offense. Like, they don't – if you can't gain chunk plays, you're not an effective quarterback for this team. So, outside of that, like, just don't get injured.
Right. And Larry Fitzgerald, I keep him out of games. Just he's got a slight knee issue. Keep him out. There's no reason for him to push himself.
Same thing with Upati, especially if J.J. Watt's not going to play. Like,
right.
Who cares? Like, all right, well, we don't have to worry about Carson Palmer getting mauled by J.J. Watt. So we'll just we'll keep Mike out of the game, get him healthy for September 11th. Because, I mean, think about it.
Well, and then you give Cole Toner. You give Cole Toner who,
Yeah, you get him the DJ Humphrey, Brandon Williams special where they get, 45 snaps. So against good players as opposed to 30 snaps against players that aren't going to be on the roster next week.
Right. And Toner, that's interesting. Cole Toner's been playing in the first team, but I had to make sure, it got tweeted out Cole Toner was running the first team, and I had to make sure that there's context to that. Mike Upati's out, Earl Watford's out, Antoine McLean's out.
Yeah, McLean, isn't that a bummer for McLean? Because you and I, after the first week, we're like, oh, dude, he's going to make this roster. And now it's like Cole Toner's looked nice, and he's a draft pick. Like, because I don't think Harlan Miller's going to make this roster. And the way Matthias Farley's played, he's really pushing Marquis Christian to make this roster. So do you really think that they're going to want to cut 3 players from their 5-man draft?
Well, and I think Harlan Miller's safe because one of the first things I looked at in the last game, the home game especially, look at the starting special teams group. Harlan Miller's in on that group. Harlan Miller's out there. So he's one of the key special teams guys. So I think Miller's in that group. Cole Toner, he's one of the guys I keep bouncing in and out of the final 53. And so, yeah, I mean, I want to see, I honestly, the more and more preseason I watch, I'm like, just whatever. Show something. Just show something. please. Just not be awful football. Show a little bit of individual flair to say, okay, this guy has a chance to develop into something. At least he can be a special teams contributor. He can be something reliable in a backup role, but show something. Show promise.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying exactly. There's really nothing more to that. Like, you just want to see a little bit more promise, but you also want to see them get off the field, and let's just get going.
Yeah, I don't care what I see from Matt Barkley. I've given up on him. So anything is. We both did 53-man, projections for the. I've done it now for after each of the preseason games, and mine's changed a little bit. I think I had Jackson Shipley in there in my first one. After his play in practice, I took him off that list. I think I went with 8 offensive linemen. Let me pull that up and see which way I went. But I went just with the 2 quarterbacks. I'm certain of that. So just 2 quarterbacks. That's all they need. I went with, Kerwin Williams. I left off the roster. I think I put Britton Golden back on, and I didn't have him on the last one. I put MoMA on there with 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. 8. I went with only 8 linemen, and that 8th lineman was Toner. Defensive line, I kept 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 on the defensive line. Xavier Williams got the bump. And I went only with 4 outside linebackers, but kept 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cornerbacks, Harlan Miller being that 5th guy. And if I were to do it this week, I'd probably bump Alan Ball for Mike Jenkins. I think that's the direction I'm going to go.
Yeah, and I mean, we had a lot of similarities. I think I kept 8 defensive linemen. I bumped Red Bryant. I kept 9 linebackers because I have no idea what to make of the inside linebacker position. And then
I'm loving how they're doing this. Is at inside linebacker, I actually have just 2 inside linebackers. It's Kevin Minter and Lonnie Fu, and then Deion Buchanan and Chris Clemens are so technically there's 2 inside linebackers on the roster and 7 safeties.
Yeah. So, but like defensive backs, see, I put Carriel Brooks on instead of Harlan Miller because he's been getting so many reps at corner, and I just don't know what to make of the corner situation right now. But, I could definitely see Harlan Miller taking that spot. But I had Mike Jenkins on the roster. Everything else is basically identical, except I only kept 5 wide receivers because I needed more room.
Yep, and that's where I read. I kind of put the guys that I said, I'm going to do this, and I had about 5 spots after that. I'm like, where do I go? Do I go with the 4th tight end? Do I go with the 9th offensive lineman, 8th defensive lineman, 5th corner? That's how I did that. So we'll both have one of those. We'll both probably have another 53-man projection after this weekend, and that'll be a wrap for this edition of the Rise Up Sea-Red show, our Rise Up Sea-Red podcast covering the Arizona Cardinals. And we've wrapped that up. So we've talked about the last postseason game. We've talked about some odds and ends, and we talked about what we're looking forward to for the game in Houston, a game that hopefully is, they kind of start their season as the preseason rehearsal, the press rehearsal. It's in Houston, and hopefully their season can end in Houston. We're coming full circle in the Super Bowl. We'll wrap this up now. This is the Rise Up Sea-Red podcast. You can find us on RevengeOfTheBirds.com, on CardsWire.com, and also on Sports360AZ.com. Or if you're just into the music side, you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and Blog Talk Radio. You can find us on Facebook, Rise Up Sea-Red, and on Twitter, Rise Up Sea-Red. That's Seth Cox of Revenge of the Birds and the NFL Draft Breakdown podcast, and I'm Jess Root from CardsWire. Thanks for listening, and go Cardinals.